I'm Jean Pogge, Delta Institute. When Mayor Emanuel was able to announce that the Fisk and Crawford coal plants would be closing, he also announced that he was appointing a task force to figure out what the future development of these plants should be. He asked Delta Institute to be a neutral facilitator of the process and help provide a report on the agreement that was reached by the parties. Delta worked as the neutral facilitator for the task force, and the task force included 3 community groups: the utility, the owner of the plant, Midwest Generation, the 2 aldermen, representatives from the city planning department, and the mayor's office. And what we did was help translate between the parties so that everybody stayed on the facts. We brought in outside speakers to help explain the process of remediation and regulation of these plants going forward. And we helped people get to a common understanding of what their goals were so that they could have a consensus agreement on guiding principles and recommendations for these 2 plants going forward. We were able to achieve that by September of 2012. The task force was composed of leadership from 3 different community groups: Perro, Pilsen Alliance, and Little Village Environmental Justice Organization. We also had a representative from the Trade Union Council. We had a representative from the utility, ComEd. We had a representative from the owner of the plants, Midwest Generation. And we had a representative from the City of Chicago Department of Planning and the mayor's office. In each case, people were leaders and representatives of the constituents that they represented. In addition to that, we had 3 public hearings in the community so that we could get input from the community members about what their vision for these plants would include. For 12 years, 13 years before the task force was formed, the community groups had been fighting with Midwest Generation, the owner, in order to get the plants closed. So there were members on the task force who had cut the fence and sat on the coal pile. There were members who had cut the fence and climbed the stack to put a sign up. And here they were sitting down with someone that they viewed as an enemy. On the flip side, the owners of the plant were not happy with these community groups forcing them to close their coal plants. So one of the first things we realized is that we had to build some kind of basis of common goal and understanding, and most importantly, trust between the individuals, because that did not exist. So what we decided was the best thing to do was to focus on the future, not the past, and to really make it a facts-based inquiry. So that's why we brought in experts on brownfield remediation, on asbestos removal, and had them talk about what those things were like and what they meant. So that everyone had the same expectations and the same understanding of what the process would be going forward. It wasn't easy. These guys have been fighting a long time, and for good reason. So that trust level was the hardest thing to build, actually. But there were many things that helped do that. Midwest Generation, at our suggestion early on, invited the whole task force to tour both plants. They let the people who cut the fence inside to see the inside, which was really a big step on their part, and showed that they were trusting of the community groups. On the flip side, at one of the public hearings, one of the Midwest Generation people got personally attacked by someone in the audience, and the community groups went up to him and apologized, and that was a big olive branch from their side. So all of that was really important in coming to a consensus. One of the primary motivators for the community to want the plants closed was the fact that the asthma rates in the community were so high. The health, and there were cancer deaths far beyond what should be in a community of that size. And people really believed that it was what's coming out of those smokestacks that was causing the illness. So one of the things that we insisted on after the plants were closed is that the air be tested by the EPA. They did that, and they found that these plants that now have air quality that's equal to or better than other communities in Chicago. So it'll be interesting over the future decades to see if the health of the community improves. My guess is that it will, because this was a prime motivator. When children have asthma, it just tears your heart out. There were about 275 workers at the 2 plants. The majority of them were IBEW workers. Many of them, I think over 60%, were at retirement age where they had a pension because they had previously been employed by the utility and they had a defined benefit pension available to them. So they just retired, and they were happy to do that. You know, unfortunately, the union contract did not allow for severance, but Midwest Generation did pay severance, and it was based on seniority. They also offered all of the workers places in their other plants if they wanted to keep their job. So there was impact on the workers, but it was moderated by those two things, by severance and by the fact that so many retired. In terms of the community, you know, having the plants close was a good thing. So that was really exciting. Actually, there was a big celebration. The remediation has not happened. You know, the pollution on those sites is contained, and when it's contained, the EPA will not take action against the current owners. However, the new owners are responsible for remediation, and the remediation will depend on what they decide to do with the plants. If, in any case, the asbestos has to be taken out of these plants, and that's step one. Secondly, if the buildings come down, there will be a lot of remediation of the soil, and that will depend on the use. That it's really important that all the stakeholders come to the table and really understand and figure out how to come to agreement around common goals. And without that, I don't believe there would have been interested buyers for these sites, because these are very well organized communities, and I think a lot of buyers were a little nervous about having to negotiate with so many community groups. So that process was really important for marketing the sites. The second thing is that there was a surprising amount of agreement between the owners and the community groups once they got on the same playing field, you know. Everyone agreed, for example, there should be no housing on these sites. These are in industrial corridors with transmission lines above. And at the beginning, I think that some people felt housing was the right answer for the sites. And there was unanimous agreement, no housing. And everyone would like to see new jobs come out of this process. And so there was agreement there. So it's amazing. When you really get people beyond the emotion and looking at the future, there's a lot more agreement. And that's important for marketing the sites. So it's sort of an important first step. The other thing I think that I would say is that the public entities have a big role to play. The fact that the mayor of Chicago appointed this task force gave it a cachet and a clout that it would not have had without that. And it's in the interest of the city and the county to really make sure they don't have an empty coal plant there for decades, which is the alternative and might have been the future of those plants. I think it's been a success so far. I think the really big question on the table is what will they do to change these plants into productive assets, and what is the future use? And so there's many conversations yet to be had with the new owner, NRG. What I think is really important is that you are starting early to think about what happens after closure. Once they close, your tax base and your revenues and your economic activity in the community will be hurt by the closing. You will lose jobs and so forth and so on. So thinking now, what are the options after closure is really a smart, and that's parallel. All my life I've worked for social justice issues in one way or another, and you know, for the sake of our grandchildren, the environment is critical, and a sustainable society means that we take care of the earth and we take care of the people on the earth. And so jobs and environment are linked in my head. So it was a real opportunity. I was honored to be part of it, and it's still ongoing. So lots of fun yet to be had.